Good afternoon. I have the job of telling you the story, the alternative story of the Middle East. So you hear about terrorism, explosions. I'm going to talk about the explosions of startups, maybe a different story that can explain the region a little bit better from where we see it rather than from where you see it on CNN. So if you want to, just as an introduction, and excuse, I'm going to throw it at you, a lot of statistics and a lot of numbers, but that's important so that you can understand the magnitude of the market and what it is that we are operating within. So if you want to look at the region as a whole, it's about 22 countries, but it's also $2.3 trillion economy and about 400 million people. That's larger than India and larger than China, obviously. What's important to know is that the Middle East is also 60% of the population is under the age of 25. So you have a massive, at least 200 to 250 people that are under the age of 25 in a market of 400 million people. So, but the potential of that group of people in terms of consumer internet is massive, and a lot of adoption for the social media. Lots of foreign, I won't bore you with this one, lots of foreign direct investment in the region, $26 billion in 2012. In terms of ease of doing business, it is all economies over there, all countries are under pressure to ease the way they do business, to reform the foreign investment laws so that they can allow for growth and for foreign investments. It is also you know, what I say, you need to, this market continues to grow and grow tremendously, specifically in the public markets. In the past year and a half, probably, the Middle East public markets have been the best performing markets across the world. So this is what Dow Jones calls the 50, Index 50, out of the biggest companies out of the public markets in the Middle East, and they are overperforming many of their peers across the region. In the UAE alone, Dubai, the Dubai Stock Exchange grew 200% from the early 2013 up to last month. So tremendous growth in that market. Nobody talks about it, obviously, but this is a market that is happening, and a lot of people have and there are new IPOs that are going into that market. They're also joining the MSCI Emerging Market Index, which is critical for us because it also reforms the public markets. They are complicated public markets. They have a lot of restrictions, a lot of laws, and the MSCI have been going into these markets and telling them, if you want to be part of that index, you have to change. And recently, Qatar and the UAE have actually reformed and have joined that index. Another story that I'd like you to know about is that one of the biggest IPOs in 2012, at the end of 2012, was actually in Iraq, in the world. Nobody obviously talks about that. They raised $1.3 billion. It's a telecom company over there, one of the largest, out of the Iraqi market itself, at a valuation of about $5 billion. So lots of local money, lots of local activities that are happening over there. So it's not only about oil, and it's not only about an oil economy. In terms of the internet, so if you want to talk about internet and internet adoption, it's one of the fastest growing regions in the world in terms of internet adoption. About 300% growth in the past 5 years, only second to Africa. We have about 130 to 140 internet users today, and about 70, maybe 80 million people that are already on social networks. And these social networks are the social networks that you know about. So this is Facebook, this is Twitter. This is not like China, where they have created their own social networks. The Middle East has adopted the YouTubes, the Facebooks, the Twitters and localized them in terms of the language and the uses of the language. So mobile penetration, mobile phone penetration is over 110%, so an average of more than one mobile per person. And the smartphone penetration is also at a very high level in the region. So in the UAE and Saudi Arabia, which are 60 to 65% of the economies. So when you talk about the region of 22 economies in the Middle East, effectively 2 of those economies are probably the most important in terms of internet and internet penetration and e-commerce, and that's the UAE and Saudi Arabia. So people talk about the complications in many countries, but I say if you penetrate these 2 most biggest economies of the region, then you effectively have established yourself as the dominant player in the region. This is what I call the axis of innovation. So there's the word the axis of evil. In the US, this is the axis of innovation. So Lebanon, Jordan, Egypt, and the United Arab Emirates is where all the startups are happening, is where all the internet growth is happening, all the e-commerce companies are actually happening. And my good friend Dave is investing in some of the companies that are coming out of the region and bringing them over also to his accelerator here. So let me just maybe explain a little bit more about what is happening in that space. And there's a lot. Arabic is the preferred language of the region. 98% of consumers in the region and people that surf the internet tell you, if it's in English, we're not going to be actually interacting with it, because specifically the biggest market, which is Saudi Arabia, they only want to interact in English, and there is a gap. So 1% of the content of the internet today is in Arabic, while the consumer market in the region is about 5 to 6% of the internet. So of the global usage. So bridging that gap is a must. So there's a lot of Arabic content building in terms of everything, digital content in the market. So you will see a lot of startups that are in that space. About maybe 4 years ago, you would find Arabic content only in these top 3 sites. Maktub is the most famous because it was acquired by Yahoo, and I'll explain that story, because I mean that's the story that actually got the industry to happen in the region about 4 or 5 years ago. Now there are all sorts of content sites, whether it's medical, whether it is animation, it is weather, it is lifestyle. You find there are tens and tens of companies that are popping up with Arabic content. A lot of them are copycats of what you see in the West, but in the Arabic language. So they copy what you see that has been successful, and they actually, and then effectively innovate. So copy, paste, and then see what the market is and the nuances in the market, and then innovate. Let me mention a little bit I call it the history of the internet of the region is pre-Maktub and post-Maktub. Maktub was the Yahoo of the region. It had the largest online Arabic community. Yahoo came in 2009 and made the first acquisition of its kind, and probably the only one of that size until we hear maybe a couple of stories coming in the coming year. So Maktub in English means letter, and they created the first online Arabic email system back in 2001, and then from there they aggregated all sorts of websites, and then Yahoo came and bought them. What happened with that story is 6 or 7 graduates of Maktub effectively went out and started new businesses, and most of the money have poured into these graduates. Again, a mini story of what happens here in Silicon Valley, where people come and then once they get into some of the bigger companies, the Googles, and then these graduates build the businesses. And these are the 5 or 6 companies that have come up are mostly in e-commerce. So the largest e-commerce company in the region, called Souk, has just recently raised about $100 million, all coming from Naspers in South Africa, with Tiger Global being their anchor investor from the very early days. So at a valuation of about $500 million. This used to be owned by Maktub. So again, a much larger company 3-4 years down the road from the acquisition of Yahoo, of that company. There are e-commerce in the region is growing. It's going to be about $15 billion next year. Lots of people are going online. There's a problem with online with e-commerce is credit card adoption and credit card usage. People in the region are scared of putting their credit card online, so you have 75% of e-commerce in the region is on COD basis, cash on delivery. You still have that old traditional collecting the cash and bringing it back, even though, and it's also the same, a little bit less in Europe, so it's not totally unheard of, but And these are the big three e-commerce companies. They've raised over $250 million in the past year and a half alone. That's a market that's happening, and probably all three of them do over $400-500 million of revenue. One of the good companies that is just rising is a company called Jamalon. Again, Dave had been advising them and is going to invest in them, and they're disrupting the way Arabic books are being sold in the region. Have invested. So Dave has invested. And then a lifestyle website that's just coming up raised $5-6 million just in the past week. So there are e-commerce is happening and is the most happening thing in the region today. I won't discuss that. E-health and everything that has to do with Arabic content is actually happening. And again, when I said the axis of innovation, most of the startups are popping out of Beirut. You hear of all sorts of sad stories out of Beirut, but there's a lot of entrepreneurs that are popping up out of that region, and you have the MOOCs that are also popping up in the Arabic language out of Egypt, out of Saudi Arabia, and out of Jordan. We have one with edX, Idrak, out of Jordan. The first regional MOOC that is popping up. And again, just to show you a little bit that there's a lot of e-money and e-payments companies that are popping up from the region, B2B and e-commerce sites, mobile apps are also in vogue, digital content. It's whatever you see here, and this looks like one of Dave's slides actually, so we're trying to, so we're copying and pasting here. So so lots, just to take you a little bit, there's angel investing, seed stage investing, and venture capital are really very early in the region. I mean, much earlier than you can imagine in any region of bar Africa probably. So barely $1 billion has been raised over the past maybe 10 years in that space, and but there are more, because again, the Maktoub story told entrepreneurs in the region that it can be done. So all sorts of techies have gone out and built their businesses. So Oasis 500 is what 500 startups is, except in Jordan. They've had waves and waves of startups. They've trained 1,500 entrepreneurs. They've invested in 71 companies, and it is what is making the industry happen in the region. If you don't do startups, and if you don't do early stage, if you don't spray, you are not going to get businesses that are going to come out. And I mean, you have to. You have to, and whoever think it doesn't work, I mean, that's how the industries happened in the region. So Flat 6 Labs is exactly the same out of Egypt. And they're getting some attention, not as much money as we would like to see them. As you see, I always mention the word jobs here, because the biggest challenge in the region, in a region that has 60% of the population under the age of 25, the biggest scaring situation in the region is, what do you do with these people when they're unemployed? And you know, my answer is always entrepreneurship. Is if you do startups, you will get jobs. And if you don't do startups, you're not going to get jobs, because big companies in the region and in the West or anywhere else are not the job creators. It is the startups. It is the companies that are under 5 years old. So we always track that. We always track that. It's a must track. I know startups are not supposed to be in the business of employment, but they are. And we need to pay attention to that, because there is that impact in terms of you thinking of bombs. You need to think of companies that are rising and actually employing these people that are in the marketplace. So these are some of the venture funds that are coming out, and most of them are raising money now. So some are in Jordan. Mine is Wanda. We're in the middle of doing our first closing. Beko is out of Dubai. Sawari is out of Cairo. Idea Developers is out of Cairo. Government is, by the way, again, as you had heard from my colleague about China earlier, governments in the region, specifically in Saudi Arabia and the UAE, are putting together venture funds, and In Lebanon, the central bank is guaranteeing actually banks that want to give money for venture companies that are popping out of Lebanon. Dave is investing in the region, and that has created a lot of attention. Rocket Internet. They have built several businesses across the region, and Plug and Play out of Silicon Valley has been looking at incubating some of the companies back in the region. Some of the Vodafone and Zain and STC are the biggest telecom companies in the region. They are creating incubators for companies that are in that space, in terms of content and apps. Just some of the numbers that of the venture funds that are coming out of the region. Again, very early stage. Very early time. It's an interesting time. I think this is when you go in, because we are going to see that economy of $2 trillion and 400 million consumers actually materialize into the next phase. So, and why do I think it's also, all these companies have established substantial presence in the region. These are companies that you all know. So this is a validation that the market is essential. Arabic language is the 4th language probably, and one of the most fastest growing languages on the internet. And all these companies that you see are paying attention. PayPal just came into the region in the substantial way. And Facebook, the biggest growth on Facebook today is the Arabic language community out of the region. So this is the story of the region. I think I am done. Thank you very much.